Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Strife's Sanctum. My name is Citizen Strife, and this week, I'm going to dabble in the occult again. About a year ago or so, I did an episode on Mushi-shi, which is widely regarded as kind of the best when it comes to anime that's dealing with the weird and the occult and everything like that. But there are, legacy shows like Gegege no Kitaro, which unfortunately I don't think they have a dub version of that. But you can kind of see what this week's vibe is going to be. That pseudo horror, weird spirits kind of vibe. The ayakashi, the yokai, that sort of ephemeral situation. And one of the shows that I always kind of go back to, because I always go in phases. I always try to find new shows to watch. One, for this channel, but two, because it's always fun to get new stuff. But every so often, I want to go through a run of like 2 to 3 shows, maybe even 4, of things that I need to rewatch. I know for sure I want to rewatch Ancient Magus Bride because the new season's coming up. I haven't seen another in for a long time. Shows like that I've seen before but forgot about a long time ago. One of the ones that I've always kind of rewatched like once every year, once every couple of years, is Holic. And Holic is a unique take on the ayakashi and yokai vibe, because some play for the unique just abstraction like Mushi-shi did, which it wasn't meant to be comedic. The difference here is that this was a comedy. But it's not just any comedy either, because it's actually from the studio Clamp and writers Clamp. So, well, not the studio, but the manga studio. Basically, Clamp did stuff like Chobits, which I'm shocked I haven't gotten around to reviewing yet, speaking of shows I like. But they've also done stuff like Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicle, which was a very strong, very long-running show in anime for manga for a long time. Because I remember watching that anime, and it was like 50 to 75 episodes, and I'm not usually into stuff like that. I got around to like 30 or 40, but I think other shows kind of caught my interest. I do need to go back to that, and especially because this ties directly into it. But less than you'd think, but also more than you think. The weird thing about Holic is the characters involved are doing their own thing. But it's still tied into Reservoir Chronicle in a very important way. The problem is, you won't notice that until the seasons that are not available on, say, Crunchyroll or Funimation. The only real issue I have with Holic, and maybe it's either because they didn't dub the final season and the OVAs, or they don't have access to them for some reason, because the original came out in 2005, 2006, and that's the major one I'm going to be talking about, the episodic part. The real nitty-gritty of the story, the final 12 or 13 episodes in the OVAs, aren't on access anywhere, which really sucks because they really fill in a lot of the gaps. A lot of the characters are kind of focusing on stuff throughout the show that they don't want to talk about and they don't want to go over, and it has to do with Yuko Ichihara, the main character. Now, sure, the show focuses on Watanuki, but for all intents and purposes, the show running through line, the reason to watch the show, the best character of the show, and the tie-in to Reservoir Chronicle is Yuko, because she is a recurring character in Reservoir Chronicle, and she is the kind of main spiritual character in this. So she is basically running the plot. She's the best character, she's the most striking visual character, and she has all of the meaty dialogue. Watanuki's just the dork foil, but in weird cases, this actually works to the show's advantage because you're seeing both sides of it. But Holic fits in that weird mode where it's its own thing that's not trying to be a spin-off of Reservoir Chronicle too directly to be a rip-off of its own material. It's trying to be its own self-contained weird thing, and it was popular for its own merits, which I always liked, because it fills in a lot of those weird yokai things that I like to do, but not in that horror way, but in that cool comedic way, or that esoteric way, like kind of like Mushi-shi does. Because Mushi-shi's still a horror on occasion, but not in the we're trying to scare the shit out of you kind of way. That's why I like shows like that. That's kind of what I prefer these shows to be. Yes, they're goofy, weird spirits and things, but they're not taken so seriously that it's just trying to be a gore fest or oh my god, I'm trying to scare you. I'm not a big horror fan guy. I'm a fan of the strange Japanese aesthetic and the yokai aesthetic because it's a myth-making procedure. I was a big myth guy growing up. I would read Shakespeare. I would read, the Odyssey or some other things. I was a big Greek culture fanatic. I've read up stuff on Celtic lore sometimes, but I always kind of stuck with the Japanese lore, and I've read some books on ghosts and all the other things. So a lot of the stuff here I would recognize in a way. So it's pulling from a lot of material that I really go for every once in a while. It's not my preferred genre, but every once in a while I want that kind of kick. So what makes the show so alluring and so special that I would go back and watch it forever? Well, I'll start with the main characters. There's only like 4 or 5, but they're all interesting in their own way, and that's without going into the who they actually are at the end of the show sort of thing, because I'm only going to be talking about the episodic 1 or 2 main seasons, the 24 episodes that are available on dub. If you want, they do have rundowns of the shows, and I'm pretty sure they have the subbed versions of the other episodes. They've done live action shows, but anyway, there's this kid known as Kimihiro Watanuki, and in the dub version he's voiced by Todd Haberkorn, who is in stuff like Knights of Sidonia and whatever later on. He's this just really squirrely, like angsty, annoying kid. He's got good traits about him, like he's well-to-do and determined, but he comes across as a bit angsty and antisocial and a bit of an asshole. And Haberkorn plays him very well. He's always like screaming and always like doing these weird swooning things and being really annoying. And if he was not balanced out by the second character, I would hate the show so much, because he's tasked with this problem as he's the only one who can see ayakashi and spirits. These like weird globs of things. They're people and they're other things wandering around that nobody else can see, but he can feel them. They cloy on to him like globs and glomp him everywhere and just try to suck out his energy and whatever. And it gets him in trouble because people look at him like he's a fucking weirdo. It doesn't help that he's screaming about it every time and this is really stupid, because he's that kind of person. So kind of like me every time when I'm pissed off. But he runs into this shop that's on a side street. It gets rid of the spirits that he sees. So he's drawn in. And this is Yuko's shop. Because Yuko Ichihara, she's voiced by Colleen Clinkenbeard, who was Riza Hawkeye in Fullmetal Alchemist, and God knows whatever else. But Yuko is this sorcerer / witch that would show up every once in a while in Reservoir Chronicle and help the party. She had these like weird powers that would manifest, but not in the way you would think. Her concepts and powers really revolve around fate and changing people and doing all sorts of things. So she doesn't show off a lot. And in this show, it really just manifests in changing people's lives. making them think things, making them see things, showing them other sides of the world that don't really exist, showing off places that shouldn't exist, ephemeral places, other sides, multiple, planar universes, cool things like that. Her main role in the story is that she sells a way out. She sees people who are drawn to the shop and they have addictions. And that's what the term holic means. So she will devise a way to get rid of people's addictions for them, or to give them advice, or to stir them into doing it themselves. And a lot of what Yuko does, and this contrasts to Watanuki as well, is because she sees what his problem is and is willing to help him. But she also sees something else in him where he becomes a servant, a helper, an assistant around the shop, because he's around this sort of weirdness all the time, so he can see the spirits. She sees something in him, so she takes him under her wing and just gives advice. She acts as kind of a mother figure because Watanuki lost his. So she brings him along, and a lot of the episodes are a lot of interesting advice, seeing a lot of people doing these strange habits, because that's what the show focuses on. Yes, it has the weird spirits, and sometimes the spirits are directly involved, sometimes the characters themselves. Mostly women, which was something I noticed, was a lot of the targets are women. And I don't know if this was specifically meant to focus on like a seinen manga, but Yuko being the best character, female. And a lot of the contacts, a lot of the episodic stories revolve around women. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but you'll have situations like this girl sees spirits, so someone transfers spirits onto her because she wanted it. This woman is finishing this teacher is finishing her thesis, so she's desperate and finds this thing in a garage sale that's a monkey's paw. People playing on a pseudo Ouija board kind of game, and spirits are fucking around with everything. Just little things. And every so often, Yuko would have conversations with these people, and her contract with them says, give me something of equal value to the services rendered. And again, she's mostly watching things play out. So that weird, mysterious nature of hers. And it's not evil or good. She doesn't care. She's providing a service. It's helping people either understand or fixate on their habits, and fixing or just drowning in said habits. But at the same time, it's a moral sort of thing. It's kind of like an Aesop's kind of fable, where it's like you have to learn how to survive yourself. Sometimes you just need a little push in the right direction, whether words are powerful, just thinking things are powerful. Positive thinking changes the way you see things and how you act, or sometimes you don't. And there's always this weird feeling that something is not quite right. And whether the person survives or not is dependent on kind of, not the show's whims, but the person and who they are. If they're even aware that they're doing a thing, whether they're a liar or they're a person who uses the internet all the time. So little cool stories. And every so often you'll have Watanuki being in a full moon and wandering into the spirit's territory and doing some cool stuff to keep the spirits at bay. And he'll be joined by his classmates. He'll be joined by Shizuka Domaki, voiced by J. Michael Tatum, and Himawari Kunogi, voiced by Jeremy Lee. And Domaki is honestly an awesome dude who can do anything and is as stern and dependable and is like great with a bow, but he's got this weird like one-sided rivalry with Watanuki, all because they sort of like Himawari, who doesn't really do much. She's kind of a doormat character. She's just the nice girl. And she's okay to look at, I suppose, but it's like nothing about her screams, oh my god, she's the best thing ever in Watanuki's mind, that he would fixate on thinking that Domaki is his rival. And it's kind of stupid, really. And Cour, and I'm sure the Japanese actor would always go, Himawari! And, he would do that over and over, and it would drive me fucking nuts, right? So it's like, God, this guy's insufferable. So when he's dealing with Yuko, it balances him out and levels out his annoyance. When he's dealing with Domaki and Himawari, it's just, what the fuck? They're not that special. I mean, Domaki is. He's got this weird power. He was born in a priesthood, in a temple, and he can drive away spirits that Watanuki sees. And eventually it comes to help, begrudgingly. But in the phase of the first half of the show, nothing about Himawari stands out. The weird thing is, the stuff about Himawari only really shows up in Yuko's dialogue. She knows what Himawari is. We, as people watching the first 24 episodes, will never find out because it's one of those, like, very late. And I think it's, like, second season to the final episodes, if I remember right. I read up on the spoilers for the final episodes. You don't learn about Himawari until, like, the final 5 or 10 episodes. So it's one of those, like, little mysteries. It's like, why is Yuko bothered by her so much, or fascinated in a way? Watanuki doesn't see it. He sees what Domaki does, but has this weird annoyance because, oh my god, Himawari's so great, it's amazing! And it's like, she's really not. And it's not even the actor's fault. It's she's a plank of wood as the nice girl, right? So it's kind of like, okay, you see that everywhere. What exactly is interesting about her? I'm sure those episodes flesh that out, but as a romantic foil in Watanuki's mind, it's just some dumb crush, and it's kind of surface level, to be honest, and it doesn't really go anywhere. The real interesting thing is between Yuko and Watanuki and their little shenanigans, because they're palling around that, but they also find Mokina, who's also an awesome character, voiced by Carrie Savage, because Carrie Savage voiced White Mokina, which was the typical, hey, I'm the mascot, and I'm a good thing, and I do whatever. In this show, Mokina's, well, the Mokina idea is they're basically these, like, giant Moogle puffballs. Think like what a Moogle from Final Fantasy would look like if it looked like a giant Pokeball, just this round, rotund Pokeball looking thing, and you'd have a Mokina. And the White Mokina is, hey, I'm nice and I'm going to help the party and I'm going to do everything. Black Mokina in this show is just a drunk and talks like this, and I'm a Mokina, and is just there to have fun and there to party because almost said Yukiko because of Persona, but Yuko is always getting drunk and always doing these dumbass things on her days off because it's just like, why the fuck not? She can get drunk, so can a Mokina, might as well. And then you find out Mokina helps every once in a while in awkward ways, like flying a giant bird somehow. Don't describe it. It's a thing. Mokina is great as a jumping off point because Yuko's band of weirdos has Mokina in it, and these two assistants, Moro and Maro, who are these kind of like, I don't know, mannequins, homunculi. It's just like they just kind of repeat things Yuko says and they kind of dance around and do weird things. It adds to the allure because everything really hinges on what Yuko does and then what that translates into what Watanuki and the others do. Because everything is really centered around it. And that has to do with the visuals as well. It's not just the story, it's the visual style. Because the visual style in this show is not a typical anime style. It's very like, If you've ever seen those like stick figures, it's like half stick figure, half ukiyo-e block print paintings. They're very exaggerated, like long limbs, long legs, and they do the weird anime. Like, you've ever seen when anime gets out, like you'll see the normal anime visual, and then somebody gets really annoyed or really funny or whatever, and then do the exaggerated, like very low budget, like faces and arm flails and all that weird shit. That's this show all the time, even when Yuko's on screen. But the difference is that when there's the unique visuals necessary, when they're showing off a unique character, or when they're showing off Yuko's dress. I did it again. Damn. When they show Yuko's attire, it really changes. It gets this really sophisticated color schemes and patterns. Not quite Gankutsuo level crazy. You know, if you've seen Gankutsuo, you know how crazy intricate the visual style and the character attire and clothing choices are. Yuko is kind of splitting halfway, where she'll sometimes wear just very basic but still alluring westernized clothing. But when she gets to wear her crazy long ass kimonos and weird, like, it is this like sensual, for lack of a better term, a sensual kind of experience, because she's not doing it to be a sultry person. That's the crazy thing. It's just the way that she interacts with people, the way she has this just utter look and feel that draws you in. And you see it like in the opening stills of the show, in the OP. You're just like, what is this? It's so striking. And again, that's really where this comes in. Is it really is about her. Whether you know about what her interactions with Reservoir Chronicle is, or you just focus on this show as a thing, everything hinges on what she says, what she does, what she wears, how she interacts with people, and how she kind of brings Watanuki along, but also interacting with his friends, because she's able to interact with them and then give them advice and then learn about them, and little things like that. So, as I've said, a lot of Watanuki's issues stem from his classmates and his interactions with them, because he's an annoying jerk. But then when he's dealing with Yuko, you slowly start to understand that he's kind of using her as a sort of mother figure, because he doesn't have one. And she senses this and then tries to, be that sort of, I wouldn't say pillar of strength, but that person to rely on occasion, rather than just, I'm using you for my own benefit. Because that's obvious. She is using him for his own benefit. But then she will send him on errands to these things that end up being these like esoteric locations. It's like giving out these special lanterns and these special vistas. You find the shop full of foxes who serve this amazing ramen, or this best noodle shop you've ever had kind of thing, but only on a full moon, because you're trying to give out gifts. There's these cool esoteric things that are happening, all these weird ephemeral things that happen. And sometimes Watanuki even falls for some spirits. Like, one of the weird subplots that I enjoy is, because he's talking about Himawari all this goddamn time, he runs afoul of a couple of spirits that are governing the rain and water in general. And like, he helps one in a different episode. Only like 3 or 4 episodes later, another one comes in and actually starts falling for him, even though he doesn't realize it. And then Yuko senses it, sends him somewhere just to end up meeting the other one. And there's this like budding romance that at least has a little bit more chemistry to it than the whole Himawari thing. And you're just smacked in the face going, okay, so he knows this Himawari girl who doesn't really do anything, but every once in a while he'll show off like his true, like he's kind of nice to this other like young girl spirit, that he only sees like every couple of months, or depending on how long the game, the show works, like every 2 or 3 episodes or whatever, but that they have more chemistry. So it's like, no, that's a neat little thing. I wish they would have focused on that more, but at the end of the day, this show is episodic. So you'll get like 2 or 3 episodes on a bigger storyline, but a lot of the storylines are one episode, one little story, maybe 2. And you're not really worried about the overarching picture unless you go looking for the other episodes and OVAs. So the 24 episodes that are available on the major streaming sites are episodic. So you can kind of watch it and not worry about the overriding picture. You don't really need to see Reservoir Chronicle to enjoy this. And that's why I can kind of watch it and enjoy it. Knowing that the other episodes exist in that is kind of frustrating, because I can't really watch subs with as much intent, and I don't even know if they have legal access to them if they did, because I tried looking up on Crunchyroll and they said they only had the 24, whether it was subbed or not. So again, I don't know what real access the other episodes are. I know they exist, and I know the plot synopses do exist. So if you're able to watch the entire 37 episodes in the OVAs, I would. Just be warned that the later episodes aren't available on the main platforms. That's really the one drawback to the show, because it is such a striking experience, a unique experience buoyed by this main character who just has this mesmeric appearance, right? This mesmerizing look and sound and feel and voice. You don't usually always get characters that are this striking, that really kind of grab you like Yuko does. And that's kind of why I rewatched this show. Because it has the spiritual stuff in it, but also because Yuko as a character centralizes everything that's happening on screen. So if you haven't seen Holic before, I would highly suggest doing so. And if you're able to watch the entirety of it, that's even better, because there was a lot of stuff here and a lot of things that they can do. And I think Clamp did an amazing job with this, even though it's a little bit older of a show. But that'll do it for me. And I have a big list of things that I've still got to do, because we've gotten through Holic. Next week is the first Metal Gear. Interesting game with a lot of weird, interesting NES foibles. After that, the second episode about Spy Family or Spy X Family. I say Spy X Family. I know it's probably Spy Family, but yes, the second Cour. It's not typically this. I don't think it's technically the second season. I think it's the first season that was cut into the second half. But I'll talk about that. Next will be Chrono Trigger, widely considered one of, if not the best, SNES games. I'm personally on the side of Final Fantasy VI and Lufia 2, but Chrono Trigger being third is not something I'm not against. And trust me when I say this, Chrono Trigger still looms large in the world. Why we don't have access to it currently, other than Steam, I'll never know. Why that wasn't on the SNES Classic, I'll never fucking know. What do I know? I guess you can't have everything, I guess. And why can't we have a third Chrono game? Square brought back everything else. Anyway, I'll talk about that at a time. Speaking of the interesting and strange Japanese shows, April 30th is going to be Raven of the Inner Palace. Now, this is one that I think is probably going to get a second season. Don't quote me on it, but they have plenty to work with as far as just a first season goes. It's one of those, like, political, palace drama thing. How would I describe it? It's like a palace and court drama, like not romance. It's one of those, like, this person knows all this people and these people do this, but this guy's the consort of all this, that sort of like weaving thread political narrative, plot thing. And Raven of the Inner Palace had a bit of the unique, like, stuff that, say, Holic would. that sort of vibe to it this entire time. So Raven of the Inner Palace is a more modern show, and I was struck dumb by it, and I enjoyed it. I do think there are things that I have issues with, but I think the main characters are interesting and good, so I want to talk about that one. And then now we'll take us up to Mega May. So my idea to get through a bunch of Mega Man stuff, and Mario eventually, is just to pawn it off on May. And just be like, or even March if in Mario's case, I'm not sure. But there's like 40 to 50 Mega Man games, if not more. Maybe even approaching the hundreds, if I'm being honest. And I can get through a ton of them in one fell swoop, because I have a month devoted to them. I'm going to try it, much like I did the Dot Hack and Ruby months. We'll see how that works as far as interest. I'm probably still going to do it regardless, but it's a good way to get into a franchise that's going to have so much content by separating things out. So the first week is going to be May 7th. It's going to be Mega Man 1. And I'm going to pull in Powered Up because it adds in a couple of more Robot Masters. There's Mega Man X2, because I've already done Mega Man X last year. Week after is Mega Man Legends, which was the 3D spin-off. I'll focus solely on Mega Man Legends, and I'll save Legends 2 and Misadventures of Tron Bonne for other episodes eventually. And then Mega Man Battle Network. That one's going to be interesting because I don't really have much to go on other than watching a streamer of it. Like, a streamer played Battle Network, I think it was Battle Network 3. It was a unique thing. I enjoy kind of going through Mega Man Battle Network. I think they have access to the games now too, which is good. So all of the games I think have access to, except for Mega Man Legends, which was a PlayStation 1 release. But again, it's a way to get into Mega Man and, you know, try to get some headway into that franchise, knowing there's so many games to go on. I didn't even dig into Mega Man Zero yet, so that's going to be another big issue. But hey, it's an idea. We'll see how that goes when I get to it in May. But I've still got other episodes of other things to get through. But that'll do it for this week, and I'll see you guys next time. Citizen Strife, signing off.